Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that 60% of TV viewers say they're more likely to watch a spinoff if they loved the original show? But here's the thing with that, only a fraction of those viewers end up actually enjoying the spinoff. And why? It's because most of them fall short of expectations. In this video, we're going to break down why Better Call Saul stands out from the crowd while the Walking Dead spinoffs struggle to capture the magic of the original. We'll explore what makes a great spinoff and why so many fail to hit the mark, and trust me, after watching this, you'll never look at a TV franchise the same way again. Do you remember when everyone thought a show about Saul Goodman was a terrible idea? Yeah, me too. It actually took me forever to end up watching the show because of this reason, and fans at large were skeptical when Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould announced a Breaking Bad spinoff centered around a sleazy lawyer. I mean, how could a comic relief character possibly live up to the legacy of one of the greatest TV dramas ever made, especially when you're focusing on Jimmy McGill instead of Walter White, which is one of the best written characters of all time? Gilligan and Gould weren't interested in making another cash grab sort of spinoff. They wanted to create something that could stand on its own merits, and oh boy did they deliver. The biggest challenge they faced was creating a prequel that wouldn't just rehash what we had already known. They had to make us care about Jimmy McGill, the man behind Saul Goodman's persona. That meant diving deeper into his character, exploring his motivations, and showing us how a basically good guy could transform into the morally bankrupt lawyer that we knew from Breaking Bad. They approached this challenge by focusing on Jimmy's relationships, particularly with his brother Chuck and his partner Kim Wexler. These often painful connections gave us insights into Jimmy's psyche and helped us understand his choices, even when we didn't agree with them. Better Call Saul had also established its own unique identity while still feeling connected to the Breaking Bad universe, and this is where the show's visual style came into play. Cinematographer Michael Slovis, who worked on both series, has created a distinct look for Better Call Saul that just set it apart in every which way from its predecessor while feeling integrated a little bit. While Breaking Bad was known for its intense, often frenetic energy, Better Call Saul took a slower, more methodical approach, and the show's visual style reflected this, with careful compositions and a color palette that evolved Jimmy's character changing. This attention to detail didn't just make the show look great, it enhanced the storytelling, giving us visual cues about Jimmy's state of mind and the world he inhabits. As the first season aired, something unexpected happened. Critics started raving about the show. They praised its writing, its character development, and its ability to maintain the tone of Breaking Bad while establishing its own identity. Even some called it the gold standard for television spin-offs. The thing is, viewers weren't immediately on board. The show's premiere attracted 4 million viewers, but those numbers dropped as the season progressed. It seemed like Better Call Saul might struggle to find its audience, and I know that from experience because that was me. I watched the first episode and a bit of the second one and was not attracted to it, so I stopped watching for 3 years before I eventually picked it up. We'll get back to that later, but yet something amazing throughout all of that happened, and it happened over time. As word spread about the show's quality, more and more people started tuning in, and by the time the final season premiered, Better Call Saul had a loyal and growing fan base. It had done the impossible. It had become a worthy successor to Breaking Bad, and in some ways it even surpassed its predecessor to the point where there's people who argue, like me, that Better Call Saul is the better of the two shows. Now, as you know, the Walking Dead's universe isn't just growing, it's exploding. But as AMC churns out spin-off after spin-off, you've got to wonder, are they creating a thriving ecosystem or just feeding us to the zombies? I mean, The Walking Dead isn't just a show anymore. It's a whole damn ecosystem. AMC has big plans for this universe, and they're not shy about it. We're talking about multiple spin-offs, movies possibly, and probably a theme park at this rate. I mean, who are we kidding? I joke, they're not going to make a theme park, but seriously, they're still growing despite, a lot of the mainstream people saying they've fallen off. The proof is in the pudding. That's why there's 3 spin-off shows. But It's like they're determined to make sure we never run out of ways to watch people get eaten by the undead. But here's the thing. While AMC is busy expanding the franchise, the quality has been on a steady decline. Remember how intense and gripping those earlier seasons of The Walking Dead were? Yeah, those days are long gone, as you guys know, and now it's like watching a soap opera with zombies in it. And that begs the question, why keep making more? Well, it's simple.
Money!
Dead City and Daryl Dixon aren't born out of some burning desire to tell new stories. They're more like AMC's way of saying, hey, remember these characters you used to love? Here's them again! Please keep watching. And that's how it was with all of them, including Fear the Walking Dead, which is a central point that I'd like to talk about in this video as well as these new spin-offs. But that's where these spin-offs differ from Better Call Saul. While Saul was all about diving deep into character development and expanding the world of Breaking Bad in meaningful ways, The Walking Dead offshoots feel more like mindless zombies. I don't know how else to put it. They're just shuffling along, making noise, but not really going anywhere interesting. I mean, we just saw this with season 2 of Daryl Dixon, which was, in my opinion, a very big flop. And at that, take Dead City as well as an example of that. They're essentially just taking Maggie and Negan going to New York, and similarly to the Daryl Dixon, it's just Daryl in France. That's it. That's the pitch, because nothing says post-apocalyptic America like the Eiffel Tower, right? The problem is, these shows don't feel necessary. They don't add anything substantial to the Walking Dead universe. They're just there. It's like AMC is hoping if they throw the Walking Dead content at us, we'll forget the main show lost its bite years ago, but we will never forget that. And realistically speaking, that's the main issue here. These spin-offs fail to capture the magic of those early Walking Dead seasons because they're not trying to. They're not aiming to recreate the sense of dread, that feeling of not knowing what's around the corner. Instead, they're banking on our nostalgia and attachment to familiar faces for us to keep watching, and they're doing so in a way that's turning this franchise more into like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It doesn't feel like what made the original show so special. Now, let's talk about Jimmy McGill. You think you know Saul Goodman, right? Well, Better Call Saul created a whole new character, and Jimmy's journey might be even more compelling than Walter White's. Now, how's that for a spin-off done right? Jimmy McGill isn't just Saul's past. He's a complex character with his own identity, and the show takes us on a wild ride through Jimmy's life, showing us the choices and circumstances that shape him into helping build Walt's drug empire. And it's not just a straight line for Saul. It's more like a twisted, winding road full of detours and unexpected turns. You see, the genius of Better Call Saul lies in how it explores Jimmy's moral dilemmas. We see him struggling with his conscience, trying to do the right thing, but often falling short. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know where it's heading, but you can't look away. Bob Odenkirk nails this internal conflict. I really think he was born to play Saul Goodman. And he's said in the past that Jimmy is a guy who is trying to be good, but he has a lot of bad habits and a lot of bad influences around him. And man, does it show, both in terms of what we saw on screen and, I guess technically also on screen, but through Odenkirk's acting. He just does such a phenomenal job at bringing this character to life. And Jimmy's story isn't the only one that matters. The show balances his arc with those of other characters, especially Kim Wexler and Chuck McGill. These relationships are the heart of the show, driving Jimmy's development and the overall narrative. The writers weave these stories together so well that you can't help but get invested in everyone's journey, not just Jimmy McGill's. And let's not forget about the characters we knew from Breaking Bad. Better Call Saul adds layers to them, making them richer and more complex, and to the point where the shows become integrated. They are one and the same. There's no Better Call Saul, there's no Breaking Bad, there is just this conglomerate Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, if that makes any sense. And at that, take Mike Ehrmantraut, for example. In Breaking Bad, he's this stoic, badass fixer, but here we see his vulnerability, his struggle with guilt and his gradual involvement in the criminal world. It's like getting a whole new perspective on an old friend, one who we know in Breaking Bad died. And as the show progresses, you can't help but feel a mix of anticipation and dread for Jimmy's future, which is one we're all aware of. It's like watching a tragedy unfold and knowing the ending, but hoping against all odds that it might turn out differently. Odenkirk describes it as the struggle between who he wants to be and who he is. And that conflict is what keeps us glued to our screens. And at that, Better Call Saul just does such a great job with this concept that we all know the ending. We know where Jimmy Lies ends up. We know where Mike Ehrmantraut ends up. We know the fate of these characters, but this show was so captivating because it told a story in such a way that you almost forgot about what happened and it felt new again. That takes so much in the writer's room to do. The Walking Dead's recent spin-offs promise to breathe new life into the beloved characters we know, but they've left fans just scratching their heads. How do you take a character as iconic as Daryl Dixon and make him, boring? Let's talk about the struggle of keeping characters interesting in a show that just won't die. The Walking Dead has been shambling along for over a decade, and man, it shows. Keeping characters fresh in a long-running series is tough, I understand that, and especially in one set in a world where every day is a fight for survival. But The Walking Dead took it to a whole new level of character confusion. Daryl started out as a loner with a heart of gold, then became the group's loyal protector, and now he's in France? Because that makes total sense, right? Maggie's character arc is equally baffling. She went from a tough farm girl to a hardened survivor teaming up with Negan in Dead City after Negan killed her husband. It's like the writers forgot who these characters were supposed to be. Norman Reedus, the guy who plays Daryl, even said that he wanted to keep some of Daryl's core traits from the early seasons, but good luck finding them in the new spin-off. These changes don't feel natural at all. It's like the writers are just throwing darts at a board of character traits to see what sticks. Like, oh, let's make Daryl speak French now, oui oui. Like, hey, we're going to make Maggie team up with Negan, the guy who killed her husband. It's not character development, it's character whiplash. The spin-offs are trying to reinvent these characters in the most uninteresting ways possible. Daryl in France isn't expanding his character, it's just putting him in a new location and hoping that there's enough there to keep us interested. It's like they took everything that made these characters compelling and said, nah, let's do the opposite. This approach ignores everything we've come to know and love about these characters. It's like the writers are saying, remember all the time that you invested in understanding and rooting for these characters? Yeah, forget all that. It's disappointing and disrespectful to the audience who've stuck with the show through thick and thin, and I know you're one of them because you're watching my channel. Imagine two TV worlds. In one, you're wandering through a generic post-apocalyptic wasteland, and in another, you're navigating the sun-baked streets of Albuquerque where every corner tells a story. Which one sounds more interesting to you? Honestly, I know in your head you're probably thinking the apocalypse, but the answer that I'm about to get into might surprise you, and it's got everything to do with why some spin-offs soar while others faceplant. Albuquerque in Better Call Saul isn't just a backdrop, it's an integral part of the story. It shapes every scene, every decision, every twist in Jimmy McGill's transformation into Saul Goodman. Most viewers don't even realize how crucial it is to the show's success. Now, look at The Walking Dead's world. After so many seasons, you'd think we'd have a clear picture of post-apocalyptic America, right? No, wrong. It's as if the writers forgot the world building is more than just finding new ways to kill zombies. How many abandoned towns, mysterious communities can we see before it just all blurs together? And that's exactly what it's doing, even with Daryl in France right now. And sure, there's some cool elements, I guess, but it just all feels one and the same. And this is something that wasn't the case with early The Walking Dead. Early The Walking Dead, Georgia or Virginia or wherever it was, whether it was there, whatever, it all felt like part of the heart of the show, whether it was the cicadas that you hear or the film grain with the vast landscapes. It all felt so connected. You don't get that anymore. That being said, Better Call Saul uses its setting like a master painter uses a canvas. Every location, from Jimmy's nail salon office to the courtrooms, reveals something about the characters and their world. The creators carefully chose each spot to reflect the moral ambiguity and transformation of the heart of the show. This attention to detail affects viewer engagement. When you're watching Better Call Saul, you feel like you're in Albuquerque. You can almost feel the heat, taste the dust in the air. It makes everything feel more real and more immediate. The Walking Dead, half the time I couldn't even tell you if they're in Georgia, like I said, Virginia, or some made-up place called Alexandria. It's just all one generic zombie land, and that doesn't really tell a story. It did at one point in time. It's just not the same anymore. And speaking of that, The Walking Dead's challenge was keeping a post-apocalyptic world interesting after so many seasons, and let's be honest, they just dropped the ball entirely. Instead of exploring how society might rebuild or evolve, we've just got repetitive storylines and settings that all looked the same. Better Call Saul respects its audience's intelligence by creating a world that feels lived in and complex. It doesn't spoon-feed you information. Instead, you have to piece things together and notice little details that make Albuquerque feel real. You know the feeling when you finish a great book and immediately want more of that world? That's exactly what Better Call Saul does for Breaking Bad fans. But the Walking Dead spin-offs? They're like that friend who keeps talking even when they run out of things to say. So what makes one essential viewing and then the other just noise? It all comes down to narrative purpose. Better Call Saul has its own story to tell, and man, it does it just so well. The show digs deep into Jimmy McGill's past, showing us how this well-meaning guy with a knack for cutting corners becomes the sleazeball lawyer that we met in Breaking Bad. It's creating a whole new picture, not just filling in the blanks. Now let's look at the Walking Dead spin-offs. Fear the Walking Dead is a prime example of that. This show literally is just characters hanging around towards the end of the seasons, and they're not really sure why they're there or what they're doing. It's like 1 minute they're in one spot, the next minute in their other, and there's no continuity. There is no inner thought. They're just doing things to do things. And even with the new ones, it's like, okay, we've got these great characters that people like. What do we do with them? And instead of coming up with a compelling answer, they just shrugged and said, I don't know, send them to France, send them somewhere new, do something fun with the characters, but don't develop their stories. That's what it felt like. And Better Call Saul enhances and expands the Breaking Bad story in ways that we didn't even know we wanted. It takes characters like Gus Fring, Mike Ehrmantraut, or even people that are new like Nacho and Chuck, and gives them depth and backstory that makes Breaking Bad an even richer rewatch. And when you go back and rewatch Breaking Bad, it's like, holy shit, all of this went on in Breaking Bad, even though it was in Better Call Saul. You know what I mean? Like, it was all there. It just, the lines get blurred, like I already said. It's really like you're getting the director's cut of your favorite movie with all these new scenes, and you go, oh, that's why it happened. But the Walking Dead spin-offs are just struggling to find a reason to exist beyond, hey, remember these guys? They are not adding anything meaningful to the Walking Dead universe, or at least in a way that feels integrated. I mean, I think you and I could both think of storylines that would fit in the Walking Dead universe that would at least integrate well, like maybe an origin story of the apocalypse, or maybe the early days of the apocalypse from people we know. You know, those things could help maybe intertwine the stories, whereas these, they don't even address Rick Grimes. They don't even address people that are missing from the show, like Michonne, who just went off and fucked off, and no one acknowledges it. Not even Daryl, whose whole purpose of being in France is to find Rick. Yet, when Carol comes, they do not mention anyone's names except for Judith, maybe a little bit. That's not intertwining your story in a way that adds adhesion to the universe. And at that, you know what the key difference is? Better Call Saul is telling a story that needs to be told, whereas you don't get that from the Walking Dead spin-offs at all. Every episode, every scene, and every character interaction in Better Call Saul serves a purpose. It's building towards something. And the Walking Dead spin-offs feel like they're just killing time until the next big zombie attack. There's no overarching story anymore. I mean, they killed the CRM. There's nothing there. They're just walking aimlessly. It's like the difference between a prequel that enriches the original story and a sequel that's just cashing in on nostalgia. Better Call Saul makes you see Breaking Bad in just a whole new light, and the Walking Dead spin-offs just make you miss the days that the original show had when it was good. Now, here's an analogy. Imagine if your favorite childhood toy came back as a cheap knockoff. That's essentially what's happening with some of these spin-offs. And they're not just bad, they're actually making their original shows worse in hindsight. How is that even possible? You know what's worse than a bad ending? A good ending that won't stay dead. They're stretching the universe thin. Dead City, Daryl Dixon, Fear the Walking Dead, Tales of the Walking Dead, The World Beyond. They're not doing anything to really expand. Not even The World Beyond, which his sole job was to expand the universe, but that was quickly completely ruined by the ones who live. Now that one, I will say, that one was the only spin-off that's came out of The Walking Dead that had this adhesion to the original story, but there's a good reason for that. And it's because The Walking Dead, the ones who live, was telling a story that was never finished in the original that desperately needed to be finished because of exterior circumstances. It's hard for me to make that comparison in this video. I'm more or less, if you haven't picked up by now, talking about the other spin-offs. But Better Call Saul? That's a whole different story. The long-term effects of these approaches couldn't be more different. Years from now, people will watch Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul as one epic saga, but The Walking Dead, its spin-offs might end up as footnotes, cautionary tales of what happens when you don't know when to quit. I mean, that's already the case. It's not even in the future. It's what's happening right now. I feel like I've done a lot of talking, so let's wrap this up. Better Call Saul shows us what a spin-off can achieve when creators genuinely care about the story they're telling. It's not just a continuation, it's a masterpiece that enhances the original. On the flip side, the Walking Dead spin-offs serve as a warning about franchise fatigue. The key takeaway here is that it's not just about churning out endless content. It's about adding value to the original story. Better Call Saul didn't just ride Breaking Bad's coattails, it enriched the entire narrative of the universe. It raised the bar for what spin-offs can be, leaving the Walking Dead zombie horde in the dust. And in the end, it's quality over quantity that makes a spin-off truly successful. If you like this video, be sure to get subscribed to the channel. I have more essays just like this around the corner, and be sure to follow me on X, where I post all the frickin' time, trying to grow that up, so I'd really appreciate your support there. But with all that out of the way, thank you again so much for watching this video, and until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.